Are you surprised the CIA estimate is now 15 to 30,000, maybe 31,000 ISIS fighters?
I think a lot of the time they're just grabbing numbers out of the air. I think that's one of the reasons we see those numbers jump around so much. But it could be 30,000. Tomorrow it could be 15,000. I think the question here is not about a permanent army of 30,000 troops. It's about people who are attracted, who may become disillusioned, who may leave. It depends very much what's going on the battlefield, and to some extent even what's going on in social media. I think, we are seeing, for instance, now some British jihadis who are with ISIS who are saying they want to go back to England, but they're afraid that if they go back, they'll be prosecuted. So I think it's going to be a very fluid kind of situation.
Well, what do you think, Philip Mudd, because you've studied this as well. What I've heard is that they're recruiting leftist Sunnis, disgruntled Sunnis who hate the Shiite regime in Baghdad, and they're getting these numbers in part because they have a lot of money.
Sure, but we're confusing two questions here, Wolf, and I think the president confused them a bit last night. That is the question of how many people, some disaffected, for example, Iraqi army veteran, how many people are in the trenches in Iraq trying to unseat the regime in places like Anbar province, and how many people, for example, a recruit from New York or Washington, D.C., are in the small sliver of ISIS who might direct terrorism operations against Europe and the United States. Sure, maybe there's 30,000 people in ISIS. The vast majority of them have nothing to do with plotting against the United States. The president talked about a counterinsurgency campaign against ISIS in Iraq, but that has nothing to do with threats to Washington, D.C., and I think we ought to separate out those two questions of counterinsurgency and counterterrorism.
Fair point. Ube, you've studied ISIS, especially in Syria. What do you think of these new estimates?
Look, ISIS is not a 10-foot monster. They are vulnerable. Just recently, we've heard reports from Syrian tribes in eastern Syria that they are ready to rise up against ISIS. The tribal confederation that crosses into the border or into Iraq in western province of Anbar, those tribes are fighting ISIS. We've seen the Free Syrian Army in the recent days go on the offensive against ISIS in the northern Aleppo province. So this number is extremely fluid. And the thing about ISIS is that its worst enemy, its Achilles heel, is the local populace.
What especially worries some analysts, and I've spoken to them, is that some of these ISIS military guys who have been recruited, Iraqis, not only came from Saddam Hussein's military, others were actually in the post-Saddam Hussein Iraqi military, trained in part by the United States, but they were so irritated, so angry at the Nouri al-Maliki regime in Baghdad that they flipped and they went over to ISIS. That's a serious problem. Let me also play a little clip. Another clip from Secretary of State John Kerry's interview with our own Elise Labus. She asked him about the president's reference to Yemen and Somalia, places where the United States, the president said, has had success fighting terror. Listen to this.
ISIL is an animal unto itself, and it is significantly such a threat because of the foreign fighters that are attracted to it, which you don't see in Somalia. It is, similarly in Yemen.
Chris Dickey, is that true that you don't see a whole lot of foreign fighters with al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula in Yemen or al-Shabaab in Somalia?
I think the secretary was tired when he made those remarks. Surely he knows better than that. There have been a lot of foreign fighters who've gone and joined al-Shabaab, many of them from the United States. There have been many who have gone to Yemen to join al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. Anwar al-Awlaki was an American citizen. So I think that if we're looking at that, if that's the measure, no, that's not very encouraging at all. I think that ISIS has been good at recruiting people from Europe and the United States, but I think also Phil Mudd's point is very well taken. When we're talking about these big numbers, we're talking about a lot of people who are local, on-the-ground Iraqis and Syrians who joined up with ISIS for one reason or another, maybe hatred of the Maliki regime in Iraq, maybe certainly hatred of the Assad regime in Syria. All of that can change overnight depending on what's happening in the air and on the ground.
Phil Mudd, what do you make of what the Secretary of State was saying? Because it seemed counter to everything I had heard about al-Shabaab in Somalia and AQAP in Yemen.
I think he's halfway right. Look, if you look at the campaigns in the tribal areas of Pakistan, in Yemen and Somalia, it looks remarkably similar to what the president described. No boots on the ground, special operations, good intelligence that can pinpoint, for example, leadership in Yemen. There was just a drone strike there from the U.S. in the past 24 hours. We've had drone strikes in Somalia in the past couple of weeks. So that's successful operations that have blunted counterterror organizations. But what the president laid out and what the secretary forgot is that we've also committed to help the new Iraqi government blunt the insurgency that's trying to take over Kurdistan and move into Baghdad. That's a different question and a different goal than what we described for Somalia or Yemen. Very different.
Ube, here's what worries a lot of U.S. officials, and I want you to respond. That if the U.S. provides sophisticated weapons to the Free Syrian Army, moderate pro-Western Syrian rebels, they're not secure, that they could wind up in the hands of al-Nusra, which is a terrorist organization, or wind up in the hands of ISIS. Your reaction?
Well, we have proof of concept of the past 8 months of advanced military hardware, such as the TOW missile, an anti-tank guided missile that requires advanced training to operate in the field. For the past 8 months, Free Syrian Army and Syrian opposition forces on the ground have been effectively using this military hardware. And we don't have proof of a single one of those military systems falling into the wrong hands. So we've seen increased sophistication and due diligence by the rebel forces on the ground in the past 2 years. And so that's very heartening, and that should be reassuring to U.S. officials and allies.